Hi! So I wanted to start speaking about some of my Artivism pieces, exploring a bit about the methods I've used to create them, why I've created them, and a bit about the science behind the piece. So the piece I'd like to talk about today is my most recent Artivism piece, and it's looking at how noise pollution affects the North Atlantic right whale. I'd never heard of the North Atlantic right whale before, but it's one of the most endangered whale species in the world, and I came across it in Beatrice Forshall's brilliant book, Book of Vanishing Species, which I'd really recommend looking at if you like art and ecology. So it was when I was reading her book that I found out about North Atlantic right whales, and like lots of cetaceans, which are whales and dolphins, they are affected by noise pollution. So I wanted to explore how noise pollution affected North Atlantic right whales because when I was reading Forshall's book, I discovered that not only was it affecting their communication, which affects their ability to mate and look after their young as well as find fish and food, it also causes them to beach themselves, which leads to internal hemorrhaging. I didn't know that one of the main threats to North Atlantic right whales was internal hemorrhaging due to noise pollution, and it's something I wanted to show in my artwork. I wanted my art piece to be quite beautiful because the North Atlantic right whale is gorgeous, and I think it's important to have pieces that are beautiful so people engage with them, and that's something that I try and do in all of my Artivism pieces. So I came up with the idea of depicting the internal hemorrhaging along with a sonogram of the whale singing. Now, if you've been following my work for a little while, you will know that I've already explored noise pollution in cetaceans in my piece When the Whale Sang. I did this piece in 2020 and I used Biro. I wanted to create a really photorealistic piece, and I wanted to have it kind of fragmenting into this noise polluted part of the song, showing how noise pollution is affecting whale song and communication because of our sonar and our fishing boats and just general anthropogenic noise in our oceans. But in my most recent piece, I wanted to have a more kind of subtle depiction of the noise pollution. So I first did the background of the canvas. So I used a kind of deep teal acrylic ink, and I tried to make it as smooth as possible. I used my brush in the same direction and I blended it as much as I could to try and depict the depth of the ocean. I also layered the ink to show some of the shadows of the sea, and I knew I wanted to have beams of light filtering in through the water, the idea that there is hope, and also because water often has light coming through it, especially near the surface. And so I did this by layering on another lot of ink and kind of dragging my nails through it and using a kind of slightly stiff brush to pull the ink into like a fan. I then splashed white ink on top because I wanted to show bubbles, and this is something I layered on top of the whale. So with a lot of my ink pieces, I sketched the animal out in ink first, just lots of loose lines, trying to get the shape right. And once I've got the outline, I then start layering the ink and filling it in. So the North Atlantic right whale is a gorgeously patterned whale species. It's really rich in its colour, and so I used lots of shades of blue, I used a tiny bit of purple, and I used quite a lot of green actually. I tried to bring a lot of depth to that piece. I wanted to use purple for the shadows, and I used green to capture some of that kind of barnacle texture on its back and around its eye and mouth. I actually chose to do a calf as opposed to an adult, just because when I was reading about them, often calves are the ones being separated from their mothers by noise pollution. I realised this is quite a small detail for the piece, but it was important to me, and I hope it makes the piece more powerful for you. So once I'd done the whale, I then turned to the sonogram, and I kind of took inspiration from my piece Mummy, Where Have All the Birds Gone? Because I wanted to have the sonogram as a really kind of subtle, quite simplistic depiction of their song, unlike when I did When the Whale Sang, which was much more detailed. So I chose just to do one line depicting the song, and I tried to do it not continuous. I wanted it to be quite subtle, and I chose to do the song in white, and I wanted it to look quite hopeful and quite beautiful in tone with the rest of the piece. Originally, I had the idea to disrupt this sonogram with using a pipette and red ink to look like blood. I was thinking of kind of drawing it through and making it all kind of sharp and ragged and really disruptive and uncomfortable to look at. But when I was working on it, it didn't feel like that was the direction it wanted to go in. So instead, I pipetted dots on to look like blood spots and blood stains. I used 2 different shades of red, and then I pulled my hands, my fingernails through the ink to try and mimic the sonogram. Just at the end, but in red, and I wanted it to look much sharper, much more kind of painful. The idea that the whale has beached and it's dying. So I wanted the piece to be beautiful but also quite powerful, and I really hope that's what I've achieved.